Let's move on then to the second set of dialogues. The bride is going to continue to speak, and now she is going to describe how her bridegroom is pursuing her. And the groom is then going to invite the bride away with him and kind of journey into this countryside. These verses we will hear again in just a few short weeks. They are part of the Advent liturgy. I think somewhere around December 22nd as we get closer to the coming of this bridegroom king. This is also a little bit tricky because it is the bride speaking of the bridegroom, so it can be challenging keeping track of who's whom here. So starting in chapter 2, verse 8, she speaks of the bridegroom. The voice of my beloved, behold, he comes, leaping upon the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Behold, there he stands behind our wall, gazing in at the windows, looking through the lattice. Now, it is not meant to be that Jesus is a peeping Tom, right? We know that he is a gentleman. We recall in Revelation that he stands at the door and knocks, and he waits for an invitation for us to invite him into our hearts, into our souls. But of course, it is a reminder that he is watching. He is seeking after us. And so now he speaks to his beloved and invites her to come away. And as I read through this, think of the language of the prophets that you immersed yourself in last year, and think of how many of these images recall that yearning for a restoration, for the coming of the Messiah. He speaks these words in verse 10. My beloved speaks and says to me, arise, my love, my dove, my fair one, and come away. For behold, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of pruning has come. And the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The fig tree puts forth its figs, and the vines are in blossom. They give forth fragrance. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. So this great image of winter is past, spring, new growth, new life, a restoration, and even the fig tree putting forth its figs. Once again, that fig tree being a symbol for Israel. All right, so now we're going to see that this second dialogue closes with kind of a shift from a daydream to what I would call a nightmare. And this is the first of those two dream sequences that Dr. Bergsma outlined for us in his first outline of the structure of the book. And in it, it does appear that she is sleeping. And I call it a nightmare because she is seeking out her bridegroom and he appears to be lost. And so there's much fretting. So turning to chapter 3, starting in verse 1, she tells us, upon my bed by night I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. I called him, but he gave no answer. I will rise now and go about the city, in the streets and in the squares. I will seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. The watchmen found me as they went about in the city. Have you seen him whom my soul loves? And so we get this sense of desperation. And how often in our own spiritual journeys do we find ourselves in those times of desolation when we feel that we can't find Christ in our lives, that he appears far to us. And so once again, pointing to that movement in our hearts of desolation, it also points us to another beloved disciple seeking out her bridegroom. And this set of verses are read in the liturgy on July 22nd in celebration of the feast day of Mary Magdalene. And so we see this pointing to Mary Magdalene's own search for the Christ on the day of the resurrection. And so recalling for you in the Gospel of John, we'll study more depth later in the year, we will see that once again, Mary Magdalene is out at night searching for her beloved and distressed that she cannot find him. Starting in chapter 20 of the Gospel of John, verse 11, but Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she wept, she stood to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. They said to her, Woman, why are you weeping? And she said to them, because they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him. And so very interesting, this connection, modeling for us what it means to be a disciple and reflecting our own spiritual states as we seek Jesus throughout different times and seasons of our lives.